Excellent. It's good to see everybody here tonight. It looks like we might need to adjourn and go down to the Ribbon Chop Shop and maybe we just talk across the table there. Willie said he'd pay, so. So my name is Joseph Eliston. I live over in Tokerville. I've lived there for about 37 years. I have a wonderful wife, 5 kids. The oldest 26 years old, the youngest is a sophomore in high school. Just love Tokerville, great place. Love Southern Utah. It's been home for the last 37 years, like I say. I live there because it's country lifestyle. I grew up on a dairy farm. I grew up milking cows, hauling hay. So I feel right at home in a more, a little bit smaller community. So I love it there. I have a financial planning wealth management company that I've been doing for now 30 years. This June will be my 30th year in business. It's been an awesome opportunity to serve Washington County. It's been right here in Washington County the whole of that time. I can now legally say that I was recently seen on NBC, ABC, Fox, and CBS. I've been featured in Kindle Pictures magazine. The legal department said I can now say that, so that was pretty cool for my business. And love everything outdoors. I love this country. I love the state of Utah, and I'm excited to serve you as your representative. I think this is the greatest state in the country, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that as we go through here tonight. I love conservative values. I love conservatism, and it works every time it's tried. I'm super excited to help continue to push those causes and defend our Constitution, defend our conservative way of life right here in Southern Utah. So I'm excited to represent you as your next representative.
I'm Willie Billings. It's interesting over the last 5 months now, I've said that, and then I kind of catch myself, and I'm more known as Nanette's husband. She's been the mayor, and so it kind of goes that way, but that's fantastic. I support her in everything she does. She's doing a fantastic job. But I, too, have lived in this area about 35, 36 years. I grew up in a small town in central Utah called Monroe. It's interesting, Joe and I both did dairy farming. Milked 130 cows every morning before school, 5 days a week, but in those days, what you had to do. So I've been here, and I live in Hurricane, Utah. I've got 5 children, and I have 5, and within a couple of days, I think, we'll have a 6th, my 3rd granddaughter. So I'm excited about that. So if I bust and run out of here, no, I'm just kidding, but you'll know what's going on. I've served the party for most of the last 20 years in almost every leadership capacity the county and the state party has, including the chairman of Washington County Republican Party and all of those committees, and then I served for a couple of years as the vice chairman for the state Republican Party and all the committees that come with that. So I've just got a lot of experience working on the party side of things, and that's given me the knowledge and experience and the relationships I need to really serve as a state legislator, and I really would like that opportunity. We had the convention, our county convention, about a month ago, at which I won by 62.22%. We've got to get that extra 22%. So I'm officially the Republican Party's convention nominee. And now we're going on to the primary. And so I'm just excited. I love what we do. I love the Republican platform, and I love conservatism as well. And I want to fight and defend and actually do what legislators are supposed to do, and that's protect you from the government. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 1 comes from our party platform. We believe the government properly exists by the consent of the governed and must be restrained from intruding into the freedoms of its citizens. The function of government is not to grant rights, but to protect the unalienable God-given rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Please explain in your own words the proper role of a legislator. How will you fulfill that role and make a real difference on Capitol Hill? Why do you want to be elected to this position? And both of you work full-time. This is a part-time legislature. How would you manage your personal and business responsibilities while serving in the legislature? Your first, Joseph.
We're supposed to answer in 2 minutes. Okay. So to protect us, number one, as I was visiting with Larry Ferguson, Richard Holmes over lunch, They said, educationally speaking, one of the challenges we have in our local education is they feel that the state is trying to infuse too much of their authority in our education on a local level. Just like we feel like the federal government does the same thing on a state level. So as a legislator, my job is to make sure that we try to sever and try to separate those ties to where we don't have that significant influence with the federal government on our state policy. So that's a protection that we've got to do. For example, the NEA. We need to sever that relationship. We need to make sure that we're pushing all of that stuff on a local level. We are governed best the more localized we can make that. The other part was, as far as work. Yeah, so I have a business where I can walk away, I can serve, I can be there during the legislative session for all of the different committee meetings that we have during the year. And so, yeah, I'm in a position that my business is going to be fine. I've got people, staff there that can make sure my clients are taken care of. So not a problem. I'm happy to serve. I'm in a position that I can do that service and be there for you. And then what was the last part? There's one last part.
Why do you want to be elected?
Why do I want to be a legislator? Was not on my bucket list growing up. Wasn't on my bucket list in recent years. But I'm very concerned about where we're going as a nation. I'm very concerned with the ESG thing, for example. Had a great conversation last night, actually, with Marla Oaks. He's on his way to Maine to visit with Carl Tuckerson and Tucker Paulson, excuse me, and talking about the ESG thing, which our whole entire state delegation is on board with. That kind of stuff, we got to make sure that we are on the forefront. And as a state legislator, I'm in a position with these individuals to make sure that we make that happen. Our entire delegation, from governor down to both of our senators, all our congressmen are all on board with that.
One of those three parts is I'll abbreviate the first part. I don't want to be a legislator. I want to be a representative. I believe that that's the true meaning of what we do. We represent you. And so we have to take what's in your best interest, having heard it from you, and know what you want, and we need to represent that way. Not just how we think, but how you think, and we get our best education from you. So I believe that being a representative of the people is of most important. What was the other parts of it?
Why do you want to be elected?
Over 35 years as a business owner, and interesting enough, not only did we grow up in dairy farms, we both worked as investment advisor representatives in our field. I watched how local and state federal government has intruded on my family, my clients, and on every level. And after 30 years of watching this, you start to gain not only ideas, but confidence how to fix it. And I believe that what a business mentor of mine told me years ago, when I said, how come there's so many evil people in positions of leadership? And it's because good people do nothing. And we're at the point where not just me and Joe, but you have got to engage. The days are gone where we can say, politics, that's not my thing. If you maintain that attitude, you're part of the problem. That attitude of apathy is what's created the problem that we're in. And we've got to engage and unite together, find out our common causes, get in alignment, move forward, and let's straighten this thing out. And that's why I want to do, because I believe I can bring people together, I can build alliances, and get this done. Thank you.
As a follow-up question, what committees do you hope to be on and why? What would you do on that committee to make a difference?
We're going to alternate back and forth here.
Okay. The quick answer to that, education is a huge one, because that's the basis behind our entire future. That is the core of what we need to do. The future generation, our children and grandchildren, are going to have to fix our problems here. So we've got to make sure they're solidly aware and educated on that and protect them in the educational system. So the Education Committee appropriations is a big one. Where is the money going? And both Joe and I have been in the investment industry and worked with budgets forever. We know how budgets work. We know how to fix them. We know every budget's got waste. It's just government's waste dollars are just huge compared to a family or a corporation's. Everywhere in a budget will always be reflected by priorities. Priorities are a reflection of how you budget. If you want to fix the budget and pay people more money here, you've got to cut waste, cut spending, and and cut programs that are wasteful and give it to people that actually deserve it. So the natural resources, I want to be on that because I've been guiding hunts for years, and that's where I want to spend my time. Thank you.
Two of my main focuses, of course, there's a lot of things we can focus on, but one of the biggest components and the biggest thing I've been trying to push for is the independence financially as a state. We are never going to fix anything in the state of Utah when there are strings attached, outside influences monetarily that are dictating what goes on within our state. And so unless we have a plan to get ourselves on a financial independent track, we are never going to be able to do what we ultimately can do as a state. So that's one. Anything finance committee-wise, I want to be there. I want to help make those decisions so that we can sever those outside influence dollars, be financially independent. The other is education. The reason why is because if we do not control our education options, instead of letting outside control our education choices, we as parents are going to lose the education of our children. If we lose the education of our children, guess what? They aren't even going to know what the Constitution is. We got to make sure we keep education.
And we'll have a follow-up.
How much time to follow?
1 minute was the follow-up.
Okay, quickly, you all know that the National Education Association claims that we are not the primary stakeholders in our kids' education. We're not just primary. We're the majority stakeholders in that. And we have to sever our ties there. And we've got to cut those apron strings. And we have to figure out how we can fund this. And there's ways of doing it. There's plans, there's budgeting, there's ways to come up with money, just like there's ways to find more water. And we have smart people, we can figure this out. And we have to protect our youth that way.
Another follow-up question. Let's say you're elected. Day one, is there a bill that you already have in mind that you would like to run to solve a problem or an issue? And your first judgment.
So number one, before I even get up there, before I'm even installed in the position, I plan on actually going and visiting every single legislator face to face. I'm going to go start building relationships with every single one of them, so I know how they think, I know how they feel, I know what their likes, dislikes. That way I get to understand where they're coming from. Because if you're going to get up there and you're going to try to create influence, and you're going to try to create movement in the minds and hearts of people, it's very important you get to know who they are. That process has already started. I've already built several relationships with several people up there. And so once you get that done, then you're going to be able to push through what you need to push through. So my big thing, again, education. I want to immediately make sure we protect ourselves from any kind of the critical race theory, any type of the woke movement stuff that's coming into our state, making sure that that is in a controlled way. We're not allowing the things that don't follow our principles and values, that stops, that we do not have that come in. Then immediately try to find ways to sever that NEA relationship and move that into.
Joe spoke about relationships. That's vitally important. And over the last 20 years of serving the party and the county and state leadership, I've already developed those relationships. 2 years ago when I was running, I had a whole group of the legislators calling me saying, Willie, we're all praying that you win. I've got those relationships. We have kindred spirits on what we want to do. But the first piece of legislation I want to attack, and we'll figure out exactly how to do this, is what I believe the most dangerous legislation that's come across, and that's SB 54, the signature gathering process. Okay? I was there when it was born, when the thought process was born. I was there as the vice chairman when the legislation was coming through and I was fighting. I understand deeply that the whole goal of that long term is to crush and get rid of the caucus convention system and turn us into a California-style election system. And I just can't stand the thought of that, where money is going to dictate and win elections. And so that is the first one I'm going to combat when I get up there.
One more follow-up on this issue. There's a balance between your own core beliefs and the beliefs of the majority of your constituents. What if you personally disagree with a majority of your constituents, and how will that guide your actions in the legislature? First.
Again, as a representative, if my personal beliefs are in opposition to the vast majority of the people that I'm representing, I've got to reach out and get them to sell me and change me. Because if the vast majority of people disagree with my position, there's a really good chance I'm wrong, aren't there? And the only way I fix that is I go reach out to you, I talk to you guys, I find out, where am I wrong? Where am I thinking improperly on this? If everybody else believes one way and I believe another way, I'm probably at fault here and I've got to figure out why. And so engagement with the citizens is crucial and vital to being a representative. And so I would reach out and find out where I'm in error. Because absolutely, I'm not going to have all the best ideas just because I think a certain way. If everybody else believes a certain way, I've got to step back and go, maybe I'm wrong. And learn how I can fix that.
So I am a constitutionalist. I believe that we need to follow the Constitution. I'm not in favor of any kind of diminishment or replacement or rewriting, anything of that nature. So if there's an issue that is constitutionally sound and a whole bunch of my constituents are wanting to lose some of our freedoms, I as a representative, I'm going to try to persuade you to follow the Constitution. Good news is we're in District 72, so that's never going to happen, right? So District 72 is awesome. We are conservative. We're never going to probably have any disagreements on policy because we are like-minded. So I will represent you, but guess what we do get to do? We do get to reach out and try to persuade other people who might not be following in line, like some of the northern districts, and make sure that we're trying to help educate them and persuade them, let's follow the Constitution, let's create smaller government, let's create less taxes, less government intrusion into our lives. Because we're going to agree on 99.9% of everything, so that's what I want.
Okay, another part of our GOP platform says that we oppose unreasonable and intrusive federal mandates. What issues are there that the federal government is encroaching on states' rights, and how would you solve those problems?
Well, we just came out of a pandemic. We saw what happens when there's a big panic, then there comes to our senses a little bit, and we find out that, hey, there's some things we can do. We don't necessarily have to mask up as much as we thought we needed to, yet there was still this narrative, right, that kept pushing, and it's still out there. So our state, we have to make sure that we are strong enough that we can stand up to that. And again, I want to applaud our current county commission. Washington County was the #1 county in the whole entire United States. We were the freest, we were the most prosperous, we were the most open, we moved masks quicker than everybody else, we went to school quicker than everybody else, and kudos to our county commission for doing that. I applaud them, and I want them to be re-elected for that reason alone. Yeah, please. They are amazing that way. I'm not interested in expanding government. I believe in smaller government. So anything that the federal government wants to come in and intrude upon us, we're not going to do that. But that's number one. That's a big one. But like I said before, the federal government wants to have a lot of say in our education. They want to have a lot of say in what happens with the ESG thing. I know I keep bringing that up twice now, but that's a huge deal, folks. They are going to try to control from a corporate level on down, from the SEC to the social engineers that are trying to push this Green New Deal. All of that stuff is coming down the pipe, which means that's going to affect our pension fund systems. That's going to affect companies that want to go public. They won't be able to do it because they don't have the right green score. They don't have the right social justice scores. That is a huge deal. Those types of infringements are coming. They're pushing on it big time. Again, that's why Marla Oaks is back there, because our constituents in Utah are the first ones, one of them is pushing this cause. For finally Utah is finally getting on the forefront of a few things. That's a big one, and I hope you get behind our leadership of the state and we fight that in a big, big way.
If you understand the Constitution and the way things were framed, you've all heard the term separation of powers and separation of government. Well, how many separations are there? And the reality is, each level of government has its own jurisdiction, its own boundaries, and a set of controls within that boundaries. But the natural process and the nature of government is to grow and bring more power unto itself, and to reach outside of their jurisdiction and take jurisdiction away from somebody else. That's why we've got to make sure that Governor Cox stays in his bounds, and that the school board, they understand what their jurisdiction is and what their authority is, and they stand up for that against encroachment from either the state or federal government. It's vital that they understand, and as representatives, we understand what are our authorities and what are the boundaries and controls that are set there, and stick to that and not try to reach out and overreach into other people's lives and other forms of government. It was set up this way for a reason, divinely inspired by our Heavenly Father. And that structure has worked, and it will continue to work if the governed, those of us that are governed, actually take control and understand and take possession of and ownership of the power over the governing. That only happens when education takes place, when people learn. And I'm a big advocate for, there's a group out there right now holding free classes called Center for Self-Governance that teaches all of this. And I'm going to try to do that with the citizens of our community. I'm going to try to do that with the teenagers in the towns, and where people feel empowered, where they know how to use the power and take control over the governing the way it's supposed to happen. Thank you.
You both mentioned education a number of times. Our party platform says, we believe that all children should have access to quality education. Parents have the primary right and responsibility to educate their children. We support their right to choose public, private, or home education. We support incentives to promote competitive excellence. We encourage cooperative initiatives to help all Utahns become literate in English. We support the prudent and profitable use of school trust lands. We support all interest and dividends from the permanent state school fund being distributed to each public and charter school to improve students' academic performance. What issues are there in our state regarding parents' rights? How will you protect the rights of the parents concerning the education and upbringing of their children?
First is to ensure through the state of Utah and through our local school boards to, without fail, make sure understand parents are the primary stakeholders and they are in control of their kids. I've got 5. As I look back over the years, each of my 5 children would have thrived in different environments. And it is up to me and my wife to make that choice. It is where we get to control that choice. So empower the parents where they have the choices they need. And then reach into the school district, into the priorities and the funding. And let's make sure our teachers are properly paid, where they feel their value based on how much we're paying them. They're great teachers anyway. They're doing a great job even though they're not properly paid. But let's reach in there and budget that better. Let's get the funding going to where we properly pay our teachers and we properly pay the support network they have in those classrooms and make the environment the best learning environment possible. And that's not just throwing money at something. That is making sure that whatever money is thrown at it goes to the point of productivity. Do you know what I mean by that? We know that if you just throw money into something and it's not where it needs to be to make it the most effective, it will not make a difference in that organization or any organization. So we've got to be very, very diligent in how we spend that money. And I believe with everything that's in me, that compensating our teachers better, raising their salaries, and letting them know how much we value and appreciate them, and making sure that the environment that they have to teach us, that they have the resources that they need. They don't, well, back in my day they called them teachers' aides, but now they have to take classes, and let's make sure we pay them enough where they want to be there and they want to help and assist in there. Thank you.
My wife is an amazing woman. She's a special ed teacher. And she has paraprofessionals that work with her that are being paid $14 an hour. You can actually make more money flipping burgers somewhere than being a paraprofessional in our high schools in Washington County and the state of Utah. So I agree, we do need to get some income increase for the teachers, but it's very easy anytime to say, hey, we need to pay our teachers more. when the only way most people do is they say, well, we just got to cut budgets here, we got to cut budgets there, which obviously they do. But we've got to create new revenue. We got to create a way to get ourselves, again, financially independent, where we can actually pay our teachers. My financial plan that I've proposed and talked to Marla Oaks about, within the first 2 years of the plan, we could raise teachers' salaries by $5,000. Year 3, $5,000. Year 4, $5,000. However much we need to get competitive. I believe in free markets. I believe in capitalism. I believe that private schools are powerful. I am a proud father of a son. My son Adley was one of the big pushers and actually one of the lobbyists, and one of the help write the Hope Scholarship. Pushed it this last legislative session. It did not pass. 22 House members voted for that. That was the ability to give you and I as parents the ability to take funds, go to another school where we wanted to do. I think it's a great idea because there's a lot of pressure on our schools. Hurricane High School, my wife teaches, there were 125 additional students that showed up at the beginning of the year that they weren't anticipating. That just gets giving out to more teachers, making it harder for them. If we had the Hope Scholarship, something of that nature, then a lot of that pressure can be taken off, infrastructure-wise, classroom size, and it gives us more choice. Pushing all of those education choices on a local level, that's what I'm about, getting this federal, state government out of the way, push it down to a local level.
Here's a follow-up on that. What about parents that aren't making what we would call good decisions? What do we do in that case when we've given parents choice, but they're not making what we would consider good choices?
Well, it's that thing as parents, don't we sometimes say, I love, what's it called? Agency with my kids, but how do I enforce it, right? it just sometimes doesn't work. People have the right to make choices. I believe that the reason why we have so many systemic problems in our society is because it's been the break apart and the falling apart of the family. We have a lot of policies that aren't very positive towards family. We need to make sure we keep the family the focus and create education as the new culture. If you look at doctors, for example, you look at the Indian and the Asian culture, they're only about 5% of our population, but they make up about 30% of our doctors. They are heavy education, heavy education, heavy education. That is a cultural thing that we all need to help pursue. Now, it doesn't mean that all of our kids have to go get a college education. There's great trade schools, and I love what our school district is doing that way. Well, I'll come back to that.
Well, anytime somebody comes up and says something about we don't believe the parents are doing the right thing, that gives me some really cause to be alarmed. Who's making that decision? Okay? Personal freedoms. I don't think government should be standing up and saying, we don't think you're doing the right thing. That is a dangerous slope to be on. Now, are there obvious cases where kids need help? Yes. We need to step up and as a society, help that. I just don't believe government is the answer. I think people helping people is the answer. You guys, not government. We got to quit looking to government to solve all the problems, because if we always go to the government's going to take that power and they're going to require more money to do it. We, as a society, we've got to step up and recognize these things and say, I'm going to go help my neighbor. And I'm going to grab 10 of my friends to help too. We can fix this thing without relying on government for everything.
Where I was going with that, some of the very important things, really, is that if we don't have a culture change and shift, there has become a reliance on government. There's too many people who slavery hasn't ended in the United States. When you're dependent upon the federal government for your existence, that's called slavery. You are not free. So we have got to change that culture. And that happens in our communities. That happens in the home. That happens in our churches and synagogues. That happens in service organizations. That's where that comes from.
In regards to taxation, our party platform says that we accept the necessity for limited taxation in order for government to perform and administer those services which meet essential public needs. However, we recognize that the power to tax is also the power to control, and believe that the best way to control government is to strictly control the amount of taxes imposed on the people. We encourage further simplification of tax systems, the elimination of the estate tax, and broad-based rate reduction where possible. Utah is one of the best managed states in the union, but what can we do better in regards to taxes and spending, and does the state take too much money from us, the taxpayers?
You've all heard the enemy to great is good. We keep hearing that Utah is so good, and we are. But when you feel like you're doing a great job, you stop trying to improve. And the overreach of the federal government, I'm trying to hit the question again real quick.
What can we do better in regards to taxes, and does the state take too much?
In the state, the party platform, it said the key words right there. One was that the government can levy limited taxes for certain things. Okay, anytime those certain things grow, taxes go up, right? Yep. So if you wanna keep the taxes down, you keep the government down, and you limit what they can do, and that will do what we need to do to limit the taxes. So less government, smaller government, more personal independence, and never raise taxes, especially in Utah right now. Now, we don't have a revenue problem in Utah. We have a spending problem. Revenues are, even through COVID, they surged way beyond what the state legislature thought they would do. We've got all these surpluses sitting out there, okay? Well, let's not rest on our laurels. Let's figure out what we're doing right, do more of that, but continue to reduce the influence of the federal government, cut those ties, like Jim was saying, and continue to limit what the state does, and take that responsibility on ourselves. If people need help out there, it shouldn't be the government we turn to. It should be family, friends, those types of things. And stop relying on the government. That's how you lower taxes.
So we all love Margaret Thatcher, right? She said that socialism works great until the government runs out of everybody else's money. And that's what's happened for how long in this country and in this world, not so much this country, but we're getting there, but the rest of the world for sure. So I'm an outside-of-the-box thinker. I'm not a politician. I'm not one of these guys that's been hanging around with politics forever. I'm a businessman. I think of free enterprise. I think of capitalism. So how do you get people to do something? You incentivize them. I've always believed if you were to go to all of our Congress and on the federal level, all 535 House members and Senate members, and you said, you know what, for every dollar you guys cut in taxes, we'll give you a 10% commission. You know how fast those guys would cut taxes? They would cut it faster than you could shake a stick at it. Well, not that extreme, but what about thinking outside the box and tell departments within the government, say, you know what, if you guys come under budget, you guys get a share in a bonus of half of what you saved. Now you just incentivize the department to be frugal, cut back spending, do whatever they have to do to try to maybe get a bonus at the end of the year. Because what happens is, if you don't spend your budget, what do? They don't allocate that much next year. They cut your budget back. So what do they end up doing at the end of the year? They keep spending until they get to their budget so they can get reallocated that same amount. Well, there's got to be an incentive or a reason not to do that. And maybe it's a financial incentive. Maybe it's just simply, let's watch the books a little bit closer. I don't know. But some of the best solutions, some of the best ideas, I think are still yet to come. I am so super optimistic for the future. I think Utah has the best and brightest people in the world. So we can come up with solutions on how we can trim expenses, but more importantly, we got to figure out revenue replacements before we can actually remove tax altogether. Because you can't just say we're going to cut spending by 90%. I'll come back to that.
Really has a follow-up.
What Joe is talking about there is from a financial sense, and there's some merit to that. But you guys, there's a difference between management and leadership. I call it EPR, encourage, praise, and recognize. And we have a leadership crisis in the United States, specifically in the government organizations. The autocratic leadership where they hold your job over if you don't do it right. What about encourage, praise, and recognize? What about getting people to think bigger? A proper leader is someone who, because you're there, people think, act, and perform at higher levels. So we've got to provide that leadership, as well as the cool ideas that Joe talked about there. So leadership is everything.
You know, the state does balance its budget every single year. Even with a balanced budget, our legislature just passed the largest budget in state history. It was almost $29 billion. But in order to balance the budget and cut taxes, that also means we have to cut spending. Are there any programs off the top of your head you would favor cutting in order to then cut taxes?
So again, I agree with that. And that was a huge budget increase too. If you look at the previous budget, a massive increase. One of the benefits you have in a growing state, in a conservative state, is you have increasing revenues because just simply we're growing, we're creating revenue. So as far as cutting back, I am one of those that believe in a very simple across the board measure. So if we want to cut back spending, I don't know of any department across the board, every single department, if they were very careful, they could cut a 1% very easily in a year's time. And say, okay, let's make that the goal. Let's look to cut our spending by 1%. See how it goes. Year 2, let's cut spending maybe another 1%. Because if government is bloated, it's not a matter of just, hey, this department, we're going to gut you, oh, but we're not going to gut you, and we're not going to gut you. Can you imagine the chaos you'd start to get within the ranks? But if we're saying across the board, statewide, we're going to start reducing our expenditures because it's responsible, because it's the right thing to do. Let's make it a goal. Let's go 1% year 1, see how we go. Then if everybody comes in okay, say, look at that, we can do it, we can do this again. And that way you can start to reduce taxes, yes, to a certain degree. But again, I wish I had more time to go into my financial ideas, because there's a way you can actually create massive revenue so that you can eliminate taxes on a very rapid basis. The first tax you would eliminate is the income tax. Why? Because those are your producers. Your producers are paying the income tax. Usually you place that first. Then you go on right down the line, property tax and so forth. You can actually run a government, believe it or not, on no taxes. If you do it right and you have the right systems in place, the right leadership in place, that's the plan, folks, and it can be done. I promise you it can be done.
The reason Joe knows that, and I, is because we've been working most of our adult lives looking at budgets, because we help people with their money and their finances and investments. So we've seen that we're very apt at understanding the waste that's in budgets. You just take a look at an individual's budget, and there's massive waste, and they don't even know what's happening. Well, in the government, there's enormous waste, and they don't know what's happening. And then to speak to what Joe said, and we all understand this, if we don't spend everything we got allocated, we won't get that much this year. But we don't get to do that in our own personal budgets. We have to tighten our belts. We have to find the areas to tighten those belts. And inside of government, it is enormous. The places where they can make cuts and reduce their spending, and likewise reduce taxes, is do what the rest of us have to do every year. We have to live on a budget. We got to reduce our expenses. If we don't have enough money, we got to make cutbacks. We all know how many cutbacks can be made in a government organization, to the tune of thousands and thousands and thousands of cutbacks. Okay, some organizations in government run better than others, but just the fact that they have this perceived never-ending source of money creates the problem. And the desire to spend it all so their department gets more money next year is a serious issue. So we've got to identify that and change the whole outlook of it by changing the word I'm looking for. Change the culture. That's what I'm looking for. You have to change the culture, the environment, and ask them to do what the rest of us have to do. Recognize the cuts, incentivize them to do that, cut the spending, and that's how you reduce taxes and keep it where it needs to be.
Okay, we're going to have a little bit of fun here with this one. Our party platform, when it comes to ethics and standards, says we We demand honesty, integrity, morality, and accountability of our public officials. What is one quality in your opponent that you wish you had? What strengths do your opponent have that would be a benefit to the legislature?
I will. I'm not going to go with the hair comment this time. Okay? I can. Okay. I really like this question. We had this, I think, at the last debate. And I have to tell you, this is such a fun race. Joe and I are so in lockstep on so many things. And if I had to, I don't know that I can pick one thing about Joe is. There's so many qualities. Okay? I've been able to watch this man for the better part of 30 some odd years. Right? He just has an enormous amount of character, honesty, and integrity. He's articulate, and he's just a good man. And I just don't know what else to say. There's just so much to say. I just admire him, and I'm grateful that he's running for this position. He's doing what we're supposed to do, you guys. Okay? People said, Willie, why do you get involved in this? We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to be involved. We're supposed to care enough to get involved and stay involved. And stay involved even though it gets ugly. You guys know it's going to get ugly, right? As soon as we get up to the state legislature, we're going to see the ugly parts of this. I've kind of already seen it when I was the vice chairman of the state party. And I see why good people get involved to a certain level and then they, no, I'm out, I'm gone. We can't do that, you guys. We can't. Because if we get up there and see the ugly parts of this, and we just say, I'm going to go, I don't want to subject my family to this, I'm going to go home and live my life, then who are we left with? The people that want to be there. We can't do that. So I admire the fact that he is willing to step up and take the bullets that are going to come and throw himself out here and do this. Thank you, Joe.
I wanted to ask this question at the women's meeting the other day. In Willie's intro, they said that he can make an elk bugle call with just his mouth. And not only that, but it was the bull, the cow, and the calf.
The calf.
Yeah.
And they made me do it at the end.
Okay. So I told him right then, I don't have that talent. That would be cool if I had that talent. But that's pretty cool. I love that about Willie. He loves the outdoors. He's an outdoorsman. And a lot of times we hear that saying all the time that the nut doesn't fall far from the tree. One of the cool things I get to do 3 times a week is I go up and play basketball with a whole bunch of friends. We've been doing it for 30 plus years. And Willie's son is one of those that comes and plays with us. His name is Cade. And he's a great kid. And we get to play ball together. I love it when we're on the same team because we work really well together. And he's a good kid. Well, good kids, wait a minute, maybe this should be like a wife. No, he's actually good mom.
That's more true.
But that means there's a good role model there. Willie is a hard worker. He is a very driven individual. He is very goal-oriented and very goal-focused. And as I mentioned in the debate the other day, when Willie sets his mind on something, he's very determined to go get it. And I love that. That's an amazing quality to have people that have that kind of work ethic, that kind of dedication. And I believe that's how he feels about running for office. Is that I feel that he wants to serve. I feel that he wants to do a good job for our state legislature. But I've appreciated that because, and I don't know the rest of you very well, I have to be honest. Kate's really the one I know really well, and what a great kid. But again, that's an honor to parents, right? When you have an amazing kid that grows up and you can give honor to dad and mom for that.
And we're going to continue the fun. This question actually will come from you. Is there a question you would like your opponent to answer? And your opponent has 1 minute to answer the question. I think you're first this time, Joseph.
I don't know. I was going to ask you.
That is a weird question. Let's see. Let me think about this for a second.
Nice curveball.
That is a curveball. question I would ask Willie. That is a very good question.
Throw it out.
Just another question. No one, I'd like to know how you do it. For sure, that would be nice to know.
So we're at the house later tonight, I'm sure.
Yeah. But that is a very good question to me.
And if you both agree to skip the question, we can.
This is it.
That's a weird one.
Okay, great. When it comes to the environment, our party platform says we appreciate the quality of our environment. Our air, water, and land are the heart of our existence and must be protected through balanced management. We support reasonable laws and volunteer efforts to improve air and water quality. The governor recently declared a state of emergency for the drought that we are in. What would you do as a legislator to help citizens conserve water? Joseph.
This is the biggest issue for our area specifically. And I think each of us need to do a good job. We need to be stewards of the land. My family had the awesome opportunity to go through California and go through the redwoods. I had never done that before. And there was this 2-week period right in the middle of COVID that Oregon opened up, California opened up, that we could do that. I learned an amazing thing. That redwood forest used to go clear down to Big Sur. It almost was annihilated. So those types of things are only about 4 or 5% of the redwood forest is left. It's now under state national parks. So there is a duty that we owe to each other and to this earth that we make sure that we protect our environment. Now when it comes to water, we live in a desert. That needs to be understood, A. B, I love the efforts that our county is trying to do with the gray water. I love the fact that we have done the ability to move water from place to place within southern Utah. But bottom line is, I am fully behind the Lake Powell pipeline. We have got to get that water from Flaming Gorge to Lake Powell and then pipe it from Lake Powell. You can't expect to pay for a pipe from Flaming Gorge to Washington County. That's ridiculous when you can just release the water, let it go to Lake Powell, and then pipe it here. So I love the fact that they're going to do the gray water. That's going to give us the ability to grow 1.5 times where we are now, roughly, in size of population. But we have to do that. We've got to get that water over here because it is Utah water, it is legal air water. Now it's just a matter of getting it here. But in the process, all of us need to take ownership. We can all do better, myself included. We just had this conversation about tearing out a bunch of grass. If you're mowing the grass and that's the only time you step foot on it, maybe we can replace it with something with a little less water usage. Maybe we can start planting trees and shrubs that are more conducive to the desert. Those are things we can all do.
I mentioned before the difference between leadership and management. Management would say, we're out of water, or try to scare you into submission. Leadership says, hey, we have a problem. The citizens help us. Will you guys join us in this effort? There's some things that we can do right now to really help. And when you apply leadership to that, people love to help. They love to be a part of a cause. But as soon as you tell them you have to do this or we're going to do this, what do people do? They get their backs up and they don't want to comply. And so it's all about leadership. Okay? I'm also a big believer that God creates water. And He built this earth. He can certainly sustain it. I don't believe that we're out of water. I just think we are in the process right now with brilliant people to learn how better to access it and retain that water. Joe said we live in a desert. Our water sources coming off the hills are going to vary from year to year. We've got underground water that we don't even know how much of it we're using. They can't even answer that question yet. There's water resources there. You look at Vegas, you look at Phoenix. 7,500 years ago, they were asking the same question, and guess what? They figured it out. There's water to do this. Now, should we be good stewards of that water and conserve where we can? Absolutely. And if you ask people to help with that, and you appeal to their sense of urgency during times of drought, people will step up, join the fight, and we'll all come together and we'll fix the problem there. But I will not stand for government saying we're out of water in order to scare you into compliance. The governments have used water for decades to scare people into compliance, to get you to conform, because if they get you fearful, they can control your emotions. I will not stand for that.
Our preamble says that we, the Republican Party of the great state of Utah, affirm our belief in God and declare our support for government based upon a moral and spiritual foundation. We affirm freedom for every individual as expressed in the Declaration of Independence and protected by the Constitution. If anybody's watched the news recently, it's looking like the Supreme Court may overturn Roe v. Wade. We have abortion issues, we have LGBTQ issues, we have issues right here in Utah with transgender. When faced with decisions on votes or sponsoring bills, how would you balance your core moral beliefs with compassion and seeing another's differing viewpoint? You're first.
We've, in our society, over the last 20 or 30 years, I think by design to some extent, our society has become one where if we disagree with each other, for some reason we have to be mad and hate each other. And that kills conversation, that kills cohesiveness, that hurts the ability to figure out problems together. Regardless of our core beliefs, there's other people that believe their beliefs just as strongly as we believe ours. And we need to honor their, and stand by and be willing to fight for their ability and their freedom to have their beliefs without judgment and without blaming and without fighting and arguing over it. Over the last 20 years, especially when I was the vice chairman of the state Republican Party, I worked with a group of people there. There was a great divide there going on. In the same party, they wanted to reach the same goal, two different ideas of how to get there, and they were fighting and warring over the ideas how to get to the same place. One of the abilities I possess, and why the chairman of the state party back then asked me to get involved with both sides, he knew I could put arms around both sides. I could build relationships and bring them together to work and listen to each other and find a better method and kill the dissent that was going on by bringing people together and making them realize that we're friends first, we're Republicans, we're Americans first. And I was able to do that with literally warring tribes within the state Republican Party. I believe with everything that people are inherently good and they want to work together, and that people will listen to each other with a spirit of harmony and understanding that even though you differ in opinion from that person on how to do that, maybe they can say something that will help you. So they get the end of this.
There's a great video. If you get a chance to look this up, it's just, if you go to YouTube, just search in the YouTube bar, Dr. Christensen, Harvard, Freedom of Religion. It's a great video. It's about 2.5 3 minutes long. And he's interviewing a friend that came over here from China. And he was at the end of his scholarship process, and he says, is there anything you learned being in America that kind of stood out? And he says, yeah. He says, I didn't realize how critical freedom of religion and religion in general is to the functioning of a democracy. He said that for the most part, your country has been taught principles that were not accountable to just man upon this earth, but were accountable to God. He says your synagogues, your mosques, your churches would teach that type of a thing. Now, obviously, we can't legislate morality. We can't legislate religion. We know that. But we can culturally try to help instill those values and those principles. Now, when it comes to individual rights, that's the beauty, isn't it, of our country, of our Constitution, that we all have individual rights. One of the great qualities that I have in going up to Salt Lake to the legislative floor, there's this lobbyist that comes up, pretty powerful lobbyist, and he says, hey, we're excited that you're running, we're going to be looking forward to working with you, and he says, we're going to work on these issues, and names off all these different issues. And I said, you know what's awesome about our system? I says, I will probably not vote on any one of those things, and I will disagree with you, but guess what? We get to walk away as friends. And then we sat there and hammered up for a while and talked, and that's the type of thing that I feel that I have, that I can bring to the table. I have the ability to work with people to help them understand, you know what, there are always going to be two sides to every coin, but we also have to protect our rights. I don't want my daughter to be the first one that is accosted and assaulted in a bathroom. I don't want my daughter to be the first one, so we do have to protect both sides.
The hour went by very quickly. We're going to allow each of you to have a 2-minute closing statement. And I think you're up first this time, Joseph.
I would love your vote. I would love to visit with you individually, answer any questions that you have. I am not a pure politician. I have not been in the game of trying to play politics. I'm a business owner. I'm a husband and father. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a conservative. I bring fresh ideas. I bring outside of the box thinking. I'm the type of person that says, you know what, just because it's been done this way forever doesn't mean it has to keep being done that way. Let's find a different way. Let's find a new way. You don't drain swamps with politicians. You drain swamps with businessmen that come in that don't have all this political experience and all this political game planning. I'm not one of the good old boys. I'm one of those individuals that wants to serve. I want to listen to you. I want to find out what your concerns are so that I can go help fight for those concerns up on Capitol Hill. I don't believe in dynasties. I don't believe in kingdoms. I don't believe in control. I want to tear down power and control. That's my biggest component. I think that we need to get up there. I will get up there and I will help diminish the oversight and overreach of our government in every way I can to help make sure that we are free so that we can enjoy decisions on a local level so we can raise our families in a very safe, a very conservative way of life. Just like if you watch my videos, I encourage you to go to my website, watch all my videos, because I am here to defend faith, family, and our conservative way of life, because conservatism works. It has every single time. And so it's a process of getting that influence, building those relationships, staying to core values, core principles, staying true to the Constitution, to my God, and making sure that our voices are heard. I want to know your voice. I want to represent your voice, and I feel like I'm the best man for the job.
I want to clarify. I don't want to be labeled a politician. Okay? The last 20 years that I've spent has not been as an elected official. It's been in elected positions within the Republican Party, both county and state. And in those positions, my job was to help identify, recruit, and elect really good people. That was my job. Okay? And then as a state party and a county party official, make sure that our candidates adhere to the party platform. So I am in no way, shape, a politician. I'm a guy that's been trying to fight to get good people in office. I've got a lot of experience doing that. And that experience now helps me better understand now what a good representative actually is, how they serve. One of my main campaign factors is that I don't want to just stay in good communication with the people of my community. I want to build a coalition, a mastermind alliance, a group of individuals from all walks of life, all different careers, all different parts of the county. So when legislation comes up, I know who's on that list and what they do and what they think, and we got an agreement that I can send that legislation to each one of those people. And I want them to be an influence on me on how that impacts them, their family, their business, their community. What are the effects of that, and what are the unintended consequences of that legislation? And that type of communication and feedback is going to help me be better prepared to know the needs and the desires of our citizens and correctly vote based on your behalf. That's being a representative. Thank you for your time. And I have to say, I don't know if this is the last debate or not, but I just want to say thank you to Joe. I'm still going to take some time. I want to say thank you to Joe. This has been an enjoyable process. We're going to battle it out, talking about ourselves and what we bring to the table without saying anything negative about one another. We talk about policies, our belief systems, and you guys choose. Thank you very much.
You know, during my time in Washington, D.C., I got used to seeing Bernie Sanders walking home from work carrying a six-pack on his way home. And let me tell you, in Washington, D.C., they run candidates like this out of the road. So I abandoned that Washington, decided to come to this Washington, and settled in Washington City of all places. And I have to say, I landed in the very best legislative district in the entire country because we have candidates like this who hold our values, our conservative way of life. I'm grateful, no matter who wins this race. District 72, like I said, is the best district in the entire country, and we're fortunate to have great people like this running for office. So thank you.
Just one last thing before we end this meeting this evening. I wanted to, if you haven't already picked up one of the flyers for the Juneteenth celebration we're going to have, we're not trying to make money with this. We want to help educate the community. We're going to have ice cream sundaes, and she's a powerful speaker, young, impressionable, impressive, and speaks to our core values.
Hey Ray, how are the sales?
I don't know on that.
So shoot that out, social media. Try to get that out as much as you can through all of your social media channels. That's going to be a cool event.
It will be a very cool event, and if you got the chance to come to the Lincoln Days event last year with Will Witt. Dennis Prager and Will Witt. That was a blast. And we try to do these things to help solidify the people that are in the Republican Party. Because, like someone mentioned earlier, this is my tagline on my emails. You guys are probably, if you're new delegates, you probably haven't heard it, but the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men and women to stand by and do nothing. We are here to do something. We're going to stand up for what is right. And I will be very helpful, we're very grateful to have either one of these, I did say young, but these men to represent our district. So please get everybody out to vote, and let's get everybody involved. We have recorded this, and we're going to be uploading it to the Washington County Republican Party Facebook page. So if you missed something or wanted to go back and review it, or just look at these guys one more time, you'll be able to go to that Facebook page. And if you haven't already liked the Washington County Republican Party Facebook page, please go and do so. And we look forward to June the 1st is our next Washington County Republican Party Central Committee convention, Central Committee meeting, where we will help get organized and get everything done that we need to do to help keep the Republican Party strong here in Washington County. I appreciate your attendance here tonight, and go back and tell your friends and your neighbors, go vote. And then once they get their ballots in the mail, which will be coming within the next 2
We
weeks.
send them out on June 7th.
So by the
June 7th, they'll go out in the mail. So if you haven't got your mail update, or your address updated to the Washington County Clerk's office, go do that. Very first things to do, make sure you get your ballot. Thank you again for coming. Appreciate your attendance. They should be cleaning up. That's what somebody else told me. We're church, right? Thank you.